What? Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.
What is going on, guys? It's Week 15 Cashing Points. Me, Scott Barrett, Ryan Heath this week. 13-game slate with plenty to get to. So let's dive right in. Las Vegas Raiders at the Philadelphia Eagles. Total here, 38.5. Raiders are 12.5-point underdogs. No Geno Smith, so Kenny Pickett will start for the Raiders. Michael Mayer is good to go. No Lane Johnson on the Eagles side. Scott, I'll start with you. Raiders have a slate low, 13.8 implied team total. Hard to have a lot of interest in any Raiders players. I'm curious what you're seeing on the Las Vegas side of the slate.
Yeah, I don't really think Gene T's in play. I know the volume's been pretty excellent, although we did see a bit more Raheem Mostert eat into empty snaps, empty routes. But I also think he's hurt. He had that ankle injury, and like you said, there's like no touchdown upside in this offense. I don't know if I'm going to write up Jack Betch, but I thought long and hard about it. Kenny Pickett targeted him on 6 of his 14 throws. It's a 43% target share. Route share went up to 50%, and then it went up to 76% last week. So you have the backup connection with Pickett at 3,200. I thought he's looked good these last 2 weeks, tied with Bowers for the team high in target share over that span. But the concern is like we don't know how much we can trust this usage. Sort of benefited from injuries to Michael Mayer, Ian Thomas, maybe even Dante Thornton. All are expected back. So that is either going to be one of my Galaxy Brain plays, or there's just a little too much uncertainty and not going to be in my pool.
Yeah, definitely like those shouts on the Raider side. Ryan, I'm curious what you're seeing on the Eagles side here. I certainly like the spot for Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, a little bit easier on this side for sure. So yeah, Barkley pops out the most to me just because the spread is so big, 11 points. Barkley is 134% more efficient by fantasy points per snap when his team is leading this year. That's the third biggest difference among any starting running back. We've seen him, at least over the past 2 years, have a very high ceiling in DFS. This is going to be one of several very cold weather games, so that potentially helps out the run game a bit, where Barkley kind of makes his living on making guys miss, breaking off a big play, making his whole fantasy day on those. Like this is certainly a game environment where that can happen. So yeah, I think he's a pretty solid GPP play. I would like it way more if Lane Johnson were in, just because there are very significant kind of efficiency splits with the Eagles run game with Johnson in versus out this season. But yeah, even without him, Barkley's decent. It's still the Raiders' really good on paper matchup. Only other guy maybe worth mentioning is A.J. Brown. If the Eagles do have to throw or decide to throw in this game for whatever reason, it's at least a very good schematic matchup for A.J. Brown. A lot of cover 3 that the Raiders play. That's been beneficial to Brown this year. But yeah, I think that's probably best done in like a Jalen Hurts stack. And there's just so many other plays on this slate that I don't know that I'm getting to the Eagles passing game this week.
Yeah, with only a $300 difference between Saquon and A.J. Brown, I think I'd rather just lean into Saquon. Matchup's really strong here. He's at his cheapest price point since week 1 of 2024. Scott, only guy that we didn't mention in this game, Brock Bowers. He's only 5,900. Obviously some concerns with touchdown equity, just given the implied team total here, but any interest in Bowers?
Yeah, I wrote him up as, 3% ownership is what we're showing. Really good production this year. If you remove the Brace Bowers weeks, it's 17.8 fantasy points per game. If you then also remove Denver, which intentionally sells out to stop an opposing team's top option, that climbs even farther to 21.3 fantasy points per game. And so, clearly mispriced as, what is he, the wide receiver 20 by pricing, something like that. The clear issue is like his volume's totally fallen off a cliff. with this new offensive coordinator. Maybe that's just a total fluke. Maybe he benefits from the return of Michael Mayer. Maybe, that Denver matchup played a role. It's kind of tough to say, but yeah, I mean, the production was still there. To me, he's just like a generational bet on talent, and there's clear upside as evident by, 4 weeks ago when he scored 45 DK. So he's a player I'm going to want to have exposure to. 3% and 5,900. Like, I don't know that he's not a value.
Yeah. I mean, the ownership there on Bowers is really, really nice. Let's keep it moving. Buffalo Bills at the New England Patriots. Much more exciting game here from a total perspective. 49.5. Bills are 1.5-point favorites. On the injury front, Josh Palmer questionable with an ankle injury after limited practices all week. New England side, Terrell Jennings is out. To me, this feels just like a classic Josh Allen Superman spot. 7,500, averages 28.4 DraftKings fantasy points per game over his career in games with a total of 48 or higher and a spread within 5 points. He's played in those type of games 32 times. He scored over 39 DraftKings points in 9 of those games. That's a 28% hit rate. The other interesting thing to me about this game, Ryan, is that no one's really projecting for any ownership on either side. It's a bit surprising to me that people don't want to play Josh Allen in this spot. I'm curious if you're seeing anything else in this game that jumps out to you.
Yeah, I mean, with Allen, I think it's very clearly just people don't know who to stack him with. People don't want to play him. So for that reason, I think he becomes a pretty strong contrarian play. It's a 13-game slate. Like, even if you just play him naked, you could very well, without correlation, just land on the optimal without stacking him at all. So I think that's fine. If I have to pick a guy, I think like a Gabe Davis is a fine punt. It feels like we're going to get one of those multi-touchdown Gabe Davis games at some point. But yeah, not like an amazing play or anything, but something to mix in. But on the other side of this game, there's a few interesting angles here. So Stephon Diggs, he's not going to project as like an amazing value just because we don't know what the usage is going to look like for Diggs in any given game. But this is like a perfect game environment plus a perfect matchup for Diggs. Bills are top 3 in too high usage, where we see Diggs's targets per route run go from 0.23 up to 0.28 against too high. Also, top 4 schedule adjusted matchup for opposing slot wide receivers, where Diggs has largely been of late. And it just kind of makes sense that coming off a bye, that this would be the spot against the Bills, against his former team, and in a game that could just decide the division like right now, that this would be the time the team says, okay, we will unleash Stephon Diggs. So I like him. I like him as part of game stacks. I don't think you're getting to him as like a one-off play, but yeah, as a bring back on Josh Allen, or if you get to any Drake May, I think Diggs makes a lot of sense. And then there's Travion Henderson, who is another just really great kind of GPP play to me. We've talked about this Bills run defense ad nauseum all season, but yeah, most extreme run funnel by pass rate over expectation allowed, top 3 on paper matchup. Henderson can break off big plays, so even if the volume isn't amazing, he can definitely get there on efficiency. He even got all 3 of the touches inside the 10-yard line the last time the Pats played, so the scoring upside is probably better than most people would expect with Travion Henderson based on his season-long usage. So I think he's pretty solid, even as just a standalone bet.
Yeah, really like that Travion Henderson call. Scott, curious if you have anything else to add on this Bills-Patriots game.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that just about sums it up.
Yep, right there with Ryan. I think if I'm stacking Allen up, Gabe Davis, Dalton Kincaid are pretty clearly the direction I'm looking. Could also play James Cook. He's a slightly better play over on FanDuel, though. All right, keep it moving. New York Jets at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Total here, 41.5. Jets are 13.5-point underdogs because no Tyrod Taylor, no Justin Fields. Mason Taylor also out. Brady Cook will be starting at quarterback for the New York Jets. Parker Washington questionable for the Jaguars. Ryan, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't really feel like anybody's in play on the Jets side here with Brady Cook starting. Jaguars side is a bit more interesting. Trevor Lawrence has been playing well the last couple of weeks. maybe this is the year 5 Trevor Lawrence breakout. I mean, I feel like he does this every season where he strings together 2 or 3 good games, and it never really amounts to much. And then we also have Travis Etienne, Jacoby Myers projecting quite well. Ryan, anyone else stand out to you on the Jags, or what do you think of those guys?
Yeah, with you, full fade on Jets. I just don't care when it's Brady Cook. Etienne is like the main thing I care about in this game. I think he's one of the best plays on the slate, where we've been showing between like 11 to 14% ish projected ownership. If that's the case, I'm going to want to be significantly above that. So Bashal Tutin is possibly in the doghouse. He fumbled right before the half last week, didn't play a single snap on offense after that. And we've got a potential here for Etienne to just get way more than his normal workload. He could be like 80-90% of the team's rush attempts against this Jets defense that's a top 5 run funnel, second most fantasy points per game to opposing running backs since they traded Quinnen Williams. It's just an amazing spot, really lopsided spread, top 5 implied total for the Jaguars. Yeah, and Etienne has delivered when he's gotten volume. 19.9 DraftKings points in the 4 games he's seen 17 or more carries. So yeah, even coming from the Bashal Tutin guy, I think Etienne's one of the best plays on the slate. But I talked a lot on the last game, so I'll let you guys take anything else here.
Yeah, Scott, curious if you have any other thoughts on Jets-Jags here.
No, not really. I really think this is the way to play it. I don't hate Trevor Lawrence. I mean, I hate Trevor Lawrence. Like, that's what I'm known for. But don't hate him this week. Really think 2 of his best ever games have come these last 2 weeks. I thought he's looked great. Popping his value. Ultimately not going to be in my pool. Did think about Jacoby Myers, who has had a 30+% target share in back-to-back weeks. I know both of you have written about him. The return of Parker Washington, does that preclude you from getting excited about Jacoby Myers? To me, he was just kind of on the bubble play anyway.
Yeah, I'm looking at Myers as sort of like a solid median play. I've always sort of questioned the upside here, but he has been playing really well. He's been way more efficient since joining Jacksonville, over a 30% first read target share back-to-back weeks. Last week finished with 21.4 expected fantasy points. That was 7th most. Ryan, curious if you have any other thoughts on Jacoby Myers. To me, IMME, he's a guy I'll probably get to maybe 10% of, but I'm not too excited to play.
Yeah, I mean, I would largely just line up with you. I never want to play Myers into ownership. We're showing like 9%. That's fine, but yeah, there's no slate breaking upside here, and he's not like so cheap that it's like, oh, I need this to make these lineups work.
Yeah, I really think Etienne is the guy from this game that I want to target the most at 6,500. Really, really nice play there. All right, keep it moving to the Cleveland Browns at the Chicago Bears. Total here, just 38.5. Browns are 7.5-point underdogs. Cedric Tillman questionable. Dylan Sampson is out on the Chicago side. Romo Dunze questionable. Scott, I'll start you off with Cleveland. Are you officially Shadur Hive after his 37 DK performance last week?
No, I'm not. So that was a lot of fantasy points. It was the 3rd most fantasy points by a Browns quarterback since 1965. But if you look at the underlying metrics, he's just really not playing well. Ranks dead last in completion percentage over expectation, dead last in catchable throw rate, below Dylan Gabriel, below JJ McCarthy. He ranks 1st in yak percentage. So a lot of this is really the receivers doing this. And then even if you look at last week's game, and you compare it to all games where a quarterback gained 300+ passing yards, once again, it's dead last in completion percentage over expectation, and it's the 2nd most yak percentage of any 300+ yard passer. So I know Ryan Heath keeps telling us that he's the black Tom Brady. He is Patrick Mahomes reincarnated, but I have to say I disagree with that.
Yeah, Ryan, what say you on Shadur Sanders, any of these plays on the Brown side?
Yeah, man. Not sure I'm getting to Shedeur Sanders. Yeah, the Patriots fan in me just recoiled at what Scott just tried to attribute to me. Can't say that's me. But yeah, plays on the Browns side.
Josina Anderson. Oh my God, I got you guys mixed up.
Oh man, yeah, I see how
you're not getting those. What you're not getting those Deion Sanders bucks.
No,
that must be what's going on.
I wish. Yeah.
Well, well, here's the thing: is you're probably too young for this, but you don't remember the Colin Kaepernick days. The Colin Kaepernick days.
I vaguely remember. Yeah.
He was good for a little bit because like Greg Roman was really like at the forefront of RPOs before like defenses figured out what that was. And I just remember like and he took a ton of sacks. He was just like took one of the worst sack rates in NFL history, but like his passer rating was really high. And so like people would like constantly like cite his passer rating and not his adjusted net yards per attempt. And like, so the narrative is like the real, like half the people are like, he's a Hall of Famer. The other half is he got benched for who is that awful 49ers quarterback?
Was it Blaine Gabbert?
Blaine Gabbert. There you go.
It was.
But yeah, this is like that except, but just like at like 20% the intensity level.
The one thing that I will say on Shedeur and this Browns passing attack, and I know we at least have a little bit of interest in some of these Browns pass catchers here with them as huge dogs, is Stefanski wants to throw, and we did see a 73% pass rate from the Browns last week. So, with that in mind,
we are chucking way more with Shedeur, and like that's a real thing, and that's significant because like look at what Joe Flacco did with Stefanski. He was leading, in his starts, for the 6 games he started, he was QB1 by fantasy points per game. Amari Cooper was wide receiver 2, and David Njoku was tight end 1 or mid-range wide receiver 1 production from him. So like there can be like, and even if you're not playing at a high level, as long as that pass volume is there. But I mean, I feel like we just talked a lot about the Browns, and I don't know, are we playing anyone but Fannin? I don't think so.
Yeah, Ryan, I'm curious what you say. I think Fannin is a pretty strong play, and then Judy to a lesser extent is also on the board. What do you think?
Yeah, Fannin's a really solid play. 25% target share with Shedeur. It's a really good matchup in that he's been mostly spending time in the slot where the Bears have been a top 2 on paper matchup. Just depending on, we have Cedric Tillman questionable, right? So if he's out, that actually maybe means that Fannin's in the slot even more. Isaiah Bond gets pushed more to the outside. So all of that could be very solid for Fannin. Just really good tight end play at 4K. Jerry Jeudy, kind of interesting. Not sure if he'll make my pool, but yeah, kind of an on the bubble play where Judy's been the one they attack downfield with. Bears are, top 5 in deep receiving yards per game allowed, top 3 in fantasy points per game to opposing wide receiver ones. So you could see a 4,400 Jerry Jeudy hitting on a big play or two and kind of making a lineup, but I don't think you have to get to him.
Yeah, Bears side here. Scott, I'm curious what you think about the Bears running backs this week. Browns' run defense has been notably worse over the last month on a schedule-adjusted basis. It's just tough when, it's pretty much a 50-50 split between DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai.
Yeah, this was really Ryan's take. I liked it. I thought it was compelling. The Browns' run defense maybe has just totally given up. At the very least, they're a lot more vulnerable over the last however many games, and do expect the Bears to lead throughout. So that's good game script. And they both went off in their last game. But me, I really try and steer clear of these 50-50 split backfields. And I don't know. I just think there's some really good running back plays. So this was a little thin for me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, neither Monangai or Swift are projecting particularly well. Obviously, if I had to choose one, would go with Swift, but I do think there are just better running back plays on this slate overall. If Odunze sits, Luther Burden is okay. Probably not a guy I'm going to get to much of. Did lead the Bears in targets in his first game with a route share over 62%. Decent schematic matchup for him, but I think there are better plays across the board. Let's keep it moving. Arizona Cardinals at the Houston Texans. Total here is 42.5. Arizona 9.5-point underdogs here. Marvin Harrison out. Amari DiMercado questionable. Elijah Higgins questionable for the Cardinals. On the Houston side, Nick Chubb questionable with a rib injury. Ryan, let's start with Woody Marks here. I imagine Nick Chubb ends up sitting here. We'll keep an eye on his status. Only got in one limited practice on Friday. Marks played all but one snap after Nick Chubb suffered a rib injury in Week 14. That one snap, he was being evaluated for a concussion. Texans are huge favorites here. Arizona has also allowed the second most schedule adjusted production to opposing running backs since Week 11. Ryan, to me, this all shapes up as Woody Marks just being an outstanding play this week. Obviously, the ownership is going to be there to match. What say you on Woody Marks and any other Texans guys?
Yeah, Marks is a very strong play. It's hard. The only argument you can make against it is he gets hurt in every single game and comes out for a few plays. And also Woody Marks is not that good of a running back. But yeah, everything else about this spot is just so good that I think I'm willing to ignore it. Yeah, you just made the whole case right there. I think he's one of the best values on the slate. And he is why it is kind of hard to consider some of these other cheaper Galaxy Brain running backs, because it's you could just play Woody Marks and that's probably way better. Other plays on the Texans, though, that I'm interested in, I think this could be a really good CJ Stroud and Nico Collins week. It's kind of a perfect schematic matchup for both of them. So first of all, the Cardinals play a ton of cover 4. They always just drop into quarters. They don't really blitz. They don't really get pressure. All of that is very conducive to the Texans offense actually functioning if Stroud isn't constantly under siege. So against cover 4, Stroud has thrown deep on 30% of his dropbacks, which is insane. That's triple his rate on all other dropbacks. He usually targets Nico Collins. We see an 18% bump to Collins targets per out run. And in these games when he hasn't been pressured, so on fewer than 40% of his dropbacks where Stroud's been pressured, that's 4 games, averages 21.3 DraftKings fantasy points per game. That would be over 4x his salary. In the 2 games he's been pressured on fewer than 34% of his dropbacks, that goes up to just over 27 DraftKings points per game. Cardinals, have only hit a 40% pressure rate twice this year. They average right around that 34% figure. So I do think there's some upside for Stroud. It never feels great to play him into legit ownership, but I think the matchup's good enough that I'm going to do it. Going to have a lot of Nico Collins, even regardless of Stroud as well. I think 6,700, 13% projected ownership makes him just alone a very strong play. You could play Nico plus Woody Marks without CJ Stroud. They both project well enough that I think that's okay as well. So yeah, way more interest in Texans than I would normally have, but I do genuinely think all 3 of those are pretty good plays.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, like you said, the tough thing with Stroud is that he's going to be right there as the highest owned quarterback of the slate. I think it'll either be him or Lamar Jackson as things sit right now. He projects really well. Nico Collins projects fairly well. So it's a fairly straightforward stack. It is just tough to play CJ Stroud into ownership, and this is a very deep slate. So, generally, especially on deeper slates, I like to get away from the QB chalk a bit more. Someone just asked better play Woody Marks or Devin Neal. I would definitely go with Woody Marks there. Scott, I'm curious what you think on the Arizona side here. Everyone sort of backed off the Cardinals, even though they've been the king of pass volume since Jacoby Brissett took over. Brissett's not projecting for really any ownership. And then, of course, we have Michael Wilson with no Marvin Harrison Jr., who I believe you said in the Everything Report is Marvin Harrison Sr. When Marvin Harrison Jr. is out.
Yeah, stole that one from Jamie Eisenberg, not taking credit for that, but thought that was a great line. Yeah, it's literally insane what he is doing. He scored 36.5, 24.8, and 40.2 DraftKings fantasy points. Only him and Chase have 3 or more games with 15 targets this year. I know this doesn't feel sustainable, but it's also all that's happened, and it's made me so much money, and it's not chalk. And his price really hasn't come up. He's, I don't know, better than Puka, better than Chase in the small 3-game sample we have. But he's 6,600 and he's going to be basically the same price as Nico, a little bit cheaper, and he's going to be significantly lower owned. So I think that's a conviction play for me. I know the projections don't really support it in what's undeniably a worst possible matchup. But yeah, it's just 10 plus catches, 100 plus yards. I think that's where I'm going, but maybe one of you can talk me off of it.
No, I mean, I think for tournaments, playing a Brissett, Michael Wilson, Trey McBride stack is reasonable. Of course, the matchup is pretty brutal, but ownership's going to easily reflect that. You're getting a huge ownership discount on Brissett, who had been, the chalkiest quarterback right there is the chalkiest quarterback for weeks and weeks, and now is projecting for 1 to 2% ownership across the industry. Can't say I hate it, but we might get a super inefficient 45 pass attempts as opposed to the hyper efficient 45 pass attempts that we had been getting previously. Ryan, anything to add on Arizona before we move on?
No, I don't think so. Let's move on.
Alrighty. Really fun game here. Baltimore Ravens at the Cincinnati Bengals. Total is 51.5. Ravens are favored by 2.5 points. Rashad Bateman questionable with an ankle injury, and T. Higgins is out with a concussion on the Cincinnati side. Ryan, let's start with the Ravens. I think this side is maybe a little more straightforward, although there are a ton of great plays in this game overall. Lamar Jackson projects as one of the most popular quarterbacks on the slate. He's just 6,400 against a Bengals defense that has been very, very weak to opposing quarterbacks this year. I thought you also had a great note, Ryan. Lamar off the injury report for the first time since Week 10. So curious what you think of Jackson and who you want to potentially stack him up with this week.
Yeah, I think he's really solid. I would feel way better if he wasn't going to be one of the chalkier quarterbacks, but we've got ownership like pretty flat, nobody like above 11% this week, so it doesn't bother me too much. But yeah, it's just kind of the perfect bounce back spot for him. Bengals a top 3 schedule adjusted matchup, and yeah, it all really does come down to Lamar's health for me. As you said, at least the injury report would suggest he's healthier now. He hasn't really looked healthy since he's come back to me, but that maybe the team knows better on that. And yeah, we see like this big difference in his metrics. So since he came back from injury, dead last in highly accurate throw rate, 17th in adjusted net yards per attempt, but he was 4th best and best in those stats over his first 4 weeks of 2025 before he got injured. Like, he was the amazing Lamar Jackson. If he was priced this way and it was week 1, then he would have like 30% ownership probably. So yeah, that's more how I would think of it. So yeah, I want to play a lot of Lamar. I think the best stacks are one or even both of the tight ends, because we've just seen the Bengals time and time again every single week. They just keep giving up all of these fantasy points to opposing tight ends. I think Scott had in the everything report that it's the most fantasy points allowed to tight ends by any team in like multiple decades or something to that effect. Just looking at opposing tight end twos, so whoever ran the second most routes of every team's tight end against the Bengals has averaged 8 fantasy points per game this year. Most of those guys did not run that many routes, and most of them are way worse than Isaiah Likely, who is only 3,400. Like that would get him to almost 3x just off of that. So yeah, Andrews at 39, Likely at 34. I think you can play both of them. You can mix and match either one of them. It's hard to hate either of them. I would go to them before I would go to Zay Flowers, who has to deal with DJ Turner. Flowers is fine, I suppose, but yeah, just way better price and arguably just as good upside on the tight ends here.
Yeah, I mean, Bengals have just been unbelievably bad to tight ends. We saw solid game from Dalton Kincaid last week. Dawson Knox, 93 receiving yards, which might as well be 250 yards for a normal player. Just outstanding game from every tight end who's faced Cincinnati, and yeah, that makes Mark Andrews project really, really well. Isaiah Likely doesn't project quite as well as Andrews does, but certainly still viable. Andrews has been running more routes, has been getting more targets in the red zone, in the end zone, both solid. Scott, curious what you think of the Bengals side here. Actually, before that, Scott, what do you think of Derrick Henry, who, last time these teams played, we were like, oh, this is a great Derrick Henry spot. It was on Thanksgiving. We were all excited. He starts off playing pretty well, and then all of a sudden the Ravens get down by 3 points in the second quarter, and they go totally away from him. I believe he finished the game with only 10 carries. What do you think of Henry? And then we can talk Bengals.
Yeah, if it doesn't happen this week, I don't think it's going to happen this year. But it's just the nuts best possible matchup. We talk about Bengals being generationally vulnerable to tight ends, but they're also probably the worst defense against the run as well. And so definitely could be a blow up spot. It is weird to me though. It's, both him and Saquon, like, have they lost a step? Was it the too many touches in the year before? They getting old? Was Ryan right, but a year early? And it's better to be a year early than a year late. And so, yeah, it is weird that it's just not been working. But clearly the upside is there in a best possible spot. So, tremendous slate breaking upside. Certainly a player you're going to want to have exposure to.
Yeah, I mean, if this game happened on the main slate 3-4 weeks ago, I think Henry would have pushed for 20% ownership, only projecting for about 10 to 12% right now. So certainly like him, I think, in that mid 7K range, Henry and Saquon are two guys that I'm going to end up playing a good amount of. Scott, what do you think of a Bengals team that is without T. Higgins, should funnel more targets to Jamar Chase? We also have Mitchell Tinsley, Mike Gesicki as very cheap punt options in the Bengals offense.
Yeah, I think this is there a way we could stack Lamar up with his two tight ends or with any two tight ends in this game and a Mitch Tinsley and a Jamar Chase and then fit a Christian McCaffrey and a Puka potentially? Maybe not. I will have to play around with it, but I really like Jamar Chase. You had a great blurb in the slate break talking about why schematic. I'm guessing you drew from Ryan Heath a little bit, talking about the perfect schematic matchup and all that. I didn't talk about that. I deleted it, rewrote it. It was just in his last two games against Baltimore, coincidentally, both without T. Higgins, in just 2 games, he totals 26 targets, 17 catches, 300 plus yards, 2 touchdowns. And so, yeah, it makes sense that this is a good matchup for him. Clearly massive slate rate wrecking potential, and he's a good value. I think Tinsley is potentially one of the best 3K wide receivers we've had all year. Maybe he's the new Ascot because he hasn't cleared 35 receiving yards all season. But the 2 games, his last 2 games without either Chase or Higgins, 7.5 targets per game and 18% target share, 2.0 deep targets per game, 1.5 red zone targets per game, 65% route share. That's just a really good volume for the like really good. And we know the game environment's great, but then Gesicki as well is also in play. He went off last week. He outproduced Jamar Chase. It was a game T. Higgins played, but the year before, T. Higgins was sort of the key to unlocking Gesicki. Gesicki, over his last 8 games that Higgins was out or on the injury report, 8.8 targets, 75 yards, 16 fantasy points per game. And so you're talking about a 3,300 tight end, 4% ownership. That's enticing to me. I haven't played around with the Sims at all, but just looking at some of the projections we have relative to our current projected ownership, I'm guessing they're going to like Joe Burrow stacks. They're going to like Lamar stacks this week.
Yeah, I think a lot of fun ways you can stack this game up from both sides. Joe Burrow stacks, obviously a lot easier to play when we do have these cheap punts in Mitch Tinsley and Mike Gesicki. Only pushback on Gesicki is that his routes have kind of been all over the place. In the game where that Jamar Chase missed in week 12, Gesicki was at a 64% route share. And then in week 13 with no Higgins, that dropped to 40%. So there is some volatility with the routes there. Tinsley, his role is at least a little safer in that regard. But, both of those punts have really, really strong upside here. Both project quite well in our numbers and across the industry. Also think Joe Burrow, obviously pretty nice in this game, just 6,600 projecting for 4 or 5% ownership. So yeah, whether you're stacking it up with Lamar or Burrow, there's a lot of cheap ways you can get exposure to this game. And then of course we have guys like Derrick Henry, Jamar Chase, if you're looking to pay up there. All right, let's keep it moving. Los Angeles Chargers at the Kansas City Chiefs. Total here is 40.5. Chargers are 6-point dogs. Not too much from an injury perspective outside of Quentin Johnston being questionable. Ryan, Chargers guys feel near unplayable here. 18-point implied team total. Volume has been very, very spread out. I think the Chiefs side is a little bit more tempting, but still, this is a lot grosser of a game environment than you would have expected if, someone told you that these teams were playing earlier in the season. What do you think of this game, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, first I'll say that, I just hate this game so much. Kyle Menton, one of our writers here that everybody should be following over on Twitter, was tweeting out some like offensive line stats and how offensive line play has changed for each team from like the start to the end of the season. And the Chiefs and Chargers are just two of like the worst, at least recently, where all of their players have just gotten injured. They have among the worst pass blocking both sides of this game. So it's just a little hard for me to get interested. I'm a full fade on the Chargers. I think you could have a little bit of interest in like Patrick Mahomes and Rashee Rice, just because, especially with Rice, you're getting like quite a bit of an ownership discount from some of these other receivers. It is a zone heavy matchup, at least, which does benefit Rice, but I'm just not sure I'm getting here at all personally, so I'm probably the wrong person to ask on this game.
Yeah, I think I'm going to end up playing a little bit of Mahomes, a little bit of Rice, Kelsey. That's a pretty easy stack there. Also, just from a sort of like macro NFL perspective, the Chiefs need to win out to have any hope at making the playoffs. And this game is huge because, part of that is the Chargers dropping some games along the way for the Chiefs' playoffs hope. So if they lose this week, they're totally done, and that's when you could get a bit more of the ball in Patrick Mahomes' hands, maybe more Mahomes rush attempts, and then we really know where the targets are going between Rice and Kelsey. Xavier Worthy is a guy that you could mix in if you're playing maybe a bit more Mahomes than I plan on. Scott, do you have anything to add on this game?
Kansas City's offensive line is decimated by injury. Jawan Taylor, Trey Smith, Wanya Morris are all out. I don't know if you mentioned that, but maybe that hurts past game efficiency, but Mahomes can still run. We talked about this in the projections call. I liked your pitch, Jake. I think there's something there. I think there's upside, and you have Mahomes at 2%. So I like this as a millie play. I'm not going to play this with any like real money behind it, but this is like an ideal millie stack, Mahomes and Rashee Rice. And these spots where the implied point total is really low, but we're kind of into it. We see a way for it to shoot out. And because we know like Vegas implied point totals really impact, projections around the industry in a major way, and ownership follows. So I thought this was a good call.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you don't think this game is going to shoot out, the Chiefs are going to keep their foot on the gas throughout the entire game. They're going to keep throwing. Like, there's no way they can back off. They just can't risk it. So, pretty much non-existent ownership for Patrick Mahomes in larger field tournaments, I think. Totally viable there. I'll certainly have some exposure. Keep it moving to the Washington Commanders at the New York Giants. Total here, 46.5. Commanders, 2.5-point dogs. Injuries on the Washington side. Jaden Daniels is out. Chris Rodriguez, Deebo Samuel, both questionable. Scott, Marcus Mariota, only 5K. One of the best projected quarterbacks on the week, at least in our numbers. Curious what you think of Mariota. I think the other thing with Mariota, too, that's important to point out, Terry McLaurin only 5,400, Deebo Samuel only 5,300. Zach Ertz lost for the season due to a torn ACL. Volume should be a bit more condensed. These guys are cheap. They're projecting pretty well. Scott, what do you think of the Commander side here?
Yeah, I think he's been super underrated in this Cliff Kingsbury offense. Very quietly averages 18.5 fantasy points per game, 0.55 fantasy points per dropback. Both rank top 10, not just on this slate, but top 10 overall. He's the QB 20 by price tag. He gets a top 3 matchup against the Giants. I wrote up Terry McLaurin very early in the week just because I've been writing about this for a while. In Mariota starts, he's averaging an insane 3.8 yards per route run. That would be right up there with Puka Nacua, top 3. It's a top 3 on paper matchup. It's a great schematic matchup. And so that's really enticing to me. You could also argue that Deebo Samuel's a really strong value. That's what our projections say. He would probably benefit the most from a Zach Ertz injury, although really has been the case that McLaurin seems to be like Mariota's guy. And so I thought this was good. I thought 3 days ago Jackson Dart was going to be uber chalk, and the Mariota stack would be a little more enticing to me. But yeah, around the industry, and this is how I'm writing it up, Mariota is my cash game quarterback. I will say I did find this quote from Cliff Kingsbury that has me a little pessimistic and maybe a little bit more optimistic on Ryan's boy, Chris Rodriguez, although Rodriguez is dealing with an injury of some sorts and is questionable. But he said, quote unquote, the running game has been the best thing we've done. So we've definitely got to lean on that. Really proud of Chris Rodriguez and his progress throughout the year. He's really playing at a high level right now. So that has to be how we win these games moving forward. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's more of a conservative approach. And maybe this just means, if you are going to play this stack, you're going to need a Wan'Dale Robinson and the bring back, or maybe really you just play Dart and McLaurin and Wan'Dale. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, right now we have CJ Stroud as the top projected quarterback value, but it's very close between him, Mariota, Jackson Dart. These are, two of the better value quarterbacks on the slate. I think I lean a bit more toward Jackson Dart. I just see a bit more rushing upside there. Ryan, I'm curious what you think of Dart, Mariota, this game overall.
Yeah, I really like this game overall. It's kind of funny that Giants Commanders is like one of the best game environments on the slate. But yeah, I could see this one shooting. Those Giants are this big pass funnel. We've seen lots of teams kind of throw on them. So yeah, really like Mariota, prefer McLaurin for schematic reasons, as Scott had kind of alluded to. But Dart's also really solid. He's at 23.1 DraftKings fantasy points per start. Really with him, it's just, is he going to get the design rushing? And specifically, is he going to get the design rushing kind of in the red zone? So I feel pretty good that he will, honestly. Like, every interview Dart himself has given has been like, yeah, screw you guys. I just want to keep running. I don't care. This is how I play. It's me. His offensive coordinator said more or less the same thing, that him not getting as many design runs last week wasn't necessarily because they were trying to protect him after a concussion or anything. Sounds like it could have been more of a fluke. So yeah, I think Dart's a really strong play at 5,600. Really easy to stack with Wan'Dale Robinson, who has been seeing awesome volume in another great matchup. Commanders have been a top 3 on paper matchup to the slot. Also a top 2 on paper matchup to opposing tight ends. So you can definitely get Theo Johnson in here as well. He will also see some ownership to match, but yeah, he's seeing some solid volume, tight end 3 in target share over his 8 games with Jackson Dart. So at any of there's just so many pieces in this game that are really attractive. I made an insanely galaxy brain case for the running backs, for Tyrone Tracy and Chris Rodriguez. Maybe I won't bore people with it here, but you can go read advanced matchups for it. But basically, either of them are really great leverage on both of these likely very popular passing games. This is going to be a single-digit temperature game. So it's possible that whichever team takes control, the starting running back could kind of get there on a lot of volume, a big player too. I could see it hitting. Rodriguez especially is very cheap, but yeah, very much only a milli type of play. Probably not something I'm going to in a regular tournament.
Yeah, certainly think that makes sense. Only other guy that I wanted to throw out for Dart, and this is another sort of milli play, I think Darius Slayton is okay. But, Wan'Dale Robinson, Theo Johnson certainly projecting the best on the Giants side if you are stacking up Dart. Don't think I have anything else in this one. Lots of great plays. No one too expensive. Really, really nice game to stack up overall. Let's move it on to the Indianapolis Colts at the Seattle Seahawks. Total here is 42.5. Colts are 13.5-point underdogs. No Sauce Gardner for Indianapolis. Daniel Jones lost for the season due to a torn Achilles. That means we likely get 44-year-old grandfather Phillip Rivers starting for the Indianapolis Colts. On the Seattle side, Elijah Arroyo is out. Scott, Colts are off the board with Rivers starting. Do you disagree? Oh, he's muted. He's muted. He was about to wax poetic about Phillip Rivers.
Oh boy, yeah. I don't think anyone's really in play here. I mean, you could always go to Jackson Smith and Jigba. It's just I like him less than Nakua and less than Chase, so I'm not often going to go there. You could play Kenneth Walker, which we've done repeatedly, and it's just never worked out for us. And it's just clearly a committee. And, maybe they just totally curb stomp the Colts here and, everyone can eat. But, I don't think you could play anyone. I will say if I were in a legal betting state, what I would do is I would bet some Phillip Rivers ladders because that is so much fun. Ryan Heath looked into it. It was like plus 850 to get 235 passing yards. And that is just like the funnest sweat I can imagine. Sure, he's immobile. So was Peyton Manning for the last 5 years of his career. Sure, he's old, but he knows the offense. He's smart. You can't lose that. He is a Hall of Famer potential. Why not? Play the 44-year-old grandfather. Why not?
Yeah. I don't think I'm getting to any 44-year-old grandfather in this one. I'm with you. Pretty much just JSN for me. This is a great matchup based on fantasy points per game allowed to opposing wide receiver ones and based on our schedule-adjusted numbers. It's just a little tough, in these games where Seattle is a huge favorite. We generally see JSN score 12, 15, 20 fantasy points in the first half, only averages about 9.5 fantasy points in the second half, which is obviously still really good, top 8 among all wide receivers, but he is quite expensive, and this is just a fantastic week for both Jamar Chase and Puka Nacua. A.J. Barner also projects as a decent value in this game, especially in our numbers. 3,200, that's a decent price for a guy who's averaged 6 targets per game over his last 4 games. Also gets the tush-push carries in this offense, so could always sneak into the end zone for a touchdown. Ryan, anything else to add on this one?
Not really. There's just not much here. I think you guys covered it. I don't want to. I've written off JSN multiple times this year and live to regret it. So I'm not doing that. I'll have some, but I agree that Jamar Chase is like clearly the best expensive wide receiver play. So it gets pretty tough.
Yeah. That's where I am too. Where like I said, I am a me. I'll submit 150 teams. I still want JSN exposure. I just want a lot more Jamar Chase and Puka Nacua exposure across my lineups. Ryan, any love for Kenneth Walker? I feel like we've kind of written him off this week, and that does make me worry that this will finally be the week that he breaks off a couple 60-yard touchdowns.
That's literally the only thing that's like making me hesitate at all is I feel like it will happen the moment that I'm out. I think this is the week that I'm out. Like even though it's such a big spread, I don't think that necessarily helps Walker very much. He's only played 25% of the snaps while the Seahawks have led in the fourth quarter. So, I don't know. Like his efficiency doesn't actually get any better when they're leading, at least by fantasy points per snap. So, I can't get to Walker. I think just a Woody Marks is just a way better play. Hopefully I live to regret it because maybe that'll advance me some best ball teams or some managed teams that are starting him.
Yeah, can call it a win either way. If he sucks, hey, I told you so in DFS, and if he was great, hey, I wrote him up a ton in the offseason. I mean, for what it's worth, very comparable spot to last week for Ken Walker. Seattle beat Atlanta 37-9, although that game didn't really see a ton of positive game scripts until the second half. Still, though, 10 attempts for Walker, 3 targets, 3.8 DraftKings points. Not great. Keep it moving. Tennessee, San Francisco. Total here, 45.5. Titans are 12.5-point underdogs on the road. Largely clean from an injury perspective in this one. Ryan, we don't normally talk Titans. We've pretty much breezed through them almost every week this season. Is that going to be the case again in Week 15?
Absolutely not. I am fired up for Chimere DK, who hopefully I just said his name right. But yeah, this is to me one of the best wide receiver. You can't really call him a punt when he's 4,300. That's a little expensive for a punt, but one of the best salary savers on the slate at the wide receiver position is DK. So it's an amazing matchup. 49ers top 7 pass funnel. Their efficiency stat allowed to the slot, where DK is at about 71% of the time. It's a great schematic matchup where DK is targeted 21% more often against cover 4. And the 49ers don't really get any pressure. And DK actually is 14th among 80 qualifying wide receivers in fantasy points per route run when Cam Ward is not pressured in the games Calvin Ridley misses. So that stat just had like 5 qualifiers on it, but that's what we need to do to tout the Titans. But I genuinely do believe in this. This is not meant to be tongue-in-cheek. I am going to be playing some DK. He's gone over 16 DraftKings points in 3 of his last 6 full games, coming off a season high in XFP last week with 17.9. He's a pretty dynamic player. Like this is like a pretty good play to me. Like this is not at all tongue in cheek. Like I am playing DK.
Little pro tip for you guys at home. If you want to play some Phillip Rivers ladders and some Chimere DK ladders, that's a great way for DraftKings Sportsbook to identify you as a really soft player. So you can get some actual sharp, recommended fantasy points, Tom Brawley bets down at volume to close out the year.
Yeah, DraftKings might unban any account that plays a Phillip Rivers ladder this week. 49er side is a lot more interesting here. Plenty of 49ers that project really, really well this week, Scott. Christian McCaffrey, obviously at 9K, still earning the best volume in fantasy by, 20% better than the next closest player. Brock Purdy projecting pretty well, as is George Kittle. We've seen Juwan Jennings earn or at least lead the team in target share in the vast majority of weeks since he returned from injury. At least 49ers feel like pretty strong plays. I feel like stacking up Purdy, double stacking Purdy feels really nice this week.
Yeah, I had some concern that, Purdy still isn't fully over this toe injury and he can't, maybe fully step into his throws. That you haven't really seen them go deep at all. But it's just the nuts matchup, like I was, criticizing Shedeur or just calling into question the big game he had. My takeaway from that was really just the Titans are the nuts matchup every single week. Biggest pass funnel since week 7. Bottom 3 by adjusted net yards per attempt allowed, fantasy points per game allowed. By schedule adjusted, they're like 2.5 times as bad as any other defense. And so, second highest implied point total of the slate. Great spot for Purdy, stacked with, obviously Christian McCaffrey, I think is, maybe the best or the second best running back play of the slate behind Woody Marks, who's extreme value. And then you could play Juwan Jennings. He has a blurb in the slate breakdown, but my lean personally is George Kittle. You've just seen since Purdy came back, and also this was the case last year, is like Kittle is his number 1 receiver. So target shares come up to 24% over his last 15 games with Purdy. Kittle's averaging 17 fantasy points per game. That's wide receiver 9 levels of production. He's priced as the wide receiver 25. It's a top 5 matchup. And so probably your best stack on FanDuel at cost is Purdy, Kittle, both a little bit cheaper there on DraftKings, but I like them on both sites.
Yeah, certainly think that's a good call. Like I said, pretty much all these 49ers pieces are projecting quite well. All feel like great plays. Titans defense, number 1 pass funnel since week 7, giving up the 3rd most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. Also ranked 3rd worst in adjusted net yards per attempt allowed. This is just a great pass game matchup for all of these guys. Ryan, anything to add on the Niners before we move on?
Not really. Did we say that Christian McCaffrey averages 28.5 DraftKings fantasy points per game and wins, which is 4.2
Whoa.
more than any other RB on the slate? Like, yeah, he's a great play. Whoop-de-doo.
That's an awesome stat. Yeah, if Jahmyr Gibbs weren't in like the best game environment we've seen all year, it's like, oh yeah, if I'm paying up, it's for McCaffrey every time. He's got some legit competition though this week in Gibbs, who is just $200 cheaper. All right.
If I win the Millie with a Purdy, Kittle, CMC, DK stack, what percentage do I need to give to Ryan?
I mean, DK would be what, 1 out of your 9 slots? That's like 12% of your lineup. That sounds fair, right?
Okay.
Yeah,
I like
I'd take 12% of $1 million. That sounds good to me.
Yeah,
right.
pre-tax, right, Ryan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
there you go.
bet. I'll play it this week. Anything 6 figures or higher, you're getting 12%.
There you go. All right, Green Bay Packers at the Denver Broncos. Total here is 42.5. Packers are 2.5-point favorites. Josh Jacobs questionable with a knee injury that flared up for him after this last game. On the Denver side, Pat Bryant has been ruled out. Ryan, I don't have a ton of interest in the Denver side. This is a pretty gross game environment. I do think R.J. Harvey is pretty interesting here. Only Broncos running back to get a carry inside the 10 since the bye. Season highs in route participation and target share in Week 14. What do you think of R.J. Harvey at just $6K?
I think he's all right. That is kind of where I land. Like, there are so many good running back plays that it's going to be Harvey's like kind of on the periphery for me. But yeah, it's like a better matchup than I think people realize. Like, Packers are a top 3 run funnel by PRO allowed. They've been completely neutral to opposing running backs on the ground over the last 5 weeks. So he gets everything inside the 10-yard line. Like, he is as live as anybody to score multiple touchdowns. So he's decent, but yeah, at 6K there are just better plays.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough when, like, we all love ETN at 6,500. Woody Marks obviously projects really, really well at 5,600. Just sort of an awkward price for R.J. Harvey. I'll have a little bit of exposure, but just overall don't really love me any Broncos this week. Scott, I'm curious what you think of the Packers. Sort of a similar situation where, I mean, maybe if Jacob sits, we could talk Emmanuel Wilson projecting that well on the Packers side.
I came close to writing up Jordan Love as a bit of a galaxy brain play. You have Josh Jacobs seriously banged up and seems to be a bit worse than he was last week. And you Jordan Love, I mean, this is just such a low PRO offense, but has picked up in games where Jacobs is banged up, and Jordan Love is playing exceptionally well. Since Tucker Kraft went down, they actually rank first or second in catchable air yards per game. That's despite ranking, bottom dropbacks per game. And so, yeah, huge upside when that's the case. And actually, he's tied for the most games with 30 plus DraftKings fantasy points this year, or maybe only behind Josh Allen. So we have seen the spots where he can do it, and he's 3+ touchdowns in back-to-back games. But ultimately didn't make my pool, didn't make the slate breakdown. Part of that is the difficulty in stacking. Christian Watson looks awesome. We've really glazed him in the everything report. Kind of looks like who he was as a rookie, scoring touchdowns at an unbelievably high rate. But the target share is way better than we've seen from any Packers wide receiver since the Devontae Adams days. But he is going to draw a Patrick Surtain shadow. Jaden Reed is back, but not really an upside type guy to me. So ultimately I backed off of it, but it was, I considered as sort of like a galaxy brain Millie play.
Yeah, at least worth considering. I mean, routes have really condensed in Green Bay. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, clear top 3 there after Reed returned. And yeah, for what it's worth, if Josh Jacobs ends up sitting, Emmanuel Wilson only 4,400. Even in a tough matchup, he would project right there as the best running back value of the slate. All right, one more kind of gross game to get through, and then we can talk about the best game of the slate. Let's start it off, though, with Carolina at New Orleans. Total here is 40.5. Carolina favored by 2.5 points. No Alvin Kamara for the Saints. Ryan, Tyler Shough is at least from a volume perspective, looking pretty good. 6+ carries in 3 straight games. Over this stretch, dropped back 119 times. That's 6th most. He's completed 69 passes. That's 4th most. I think if you're just looking for like a volume-based quarterback play, Tyler Shuck is solid. Of course, we have guys like Mariota, Jackson Dart, CJ Stroud, all projecting better. But what do you think of Shuck? Any interest in like an Olave, Juwan Johnson, anything like that?
Yeah, Shuck's okay. I think all those other names you said, the Mariotas, the Darts, kind of Stroud, everyone else around 5K is quite a bit better. But yeah, I mean, we just saw like the path to Tyler Shuck upside last week. He runs in multiple touchdowns, completely possible. So yeah, enough. I do like Chris Olave quite a bit. He has one of the best schematic matchups on the slate, with the Panthers leading the NFL in cover 3 rate. We saw Olave take advantage of this back a couple weeks ago against the Panthers. He set a season high 104 receiving yards, went for over 24 DraftKings points. 72% of those came specifically against cover 3, which the Panthers will just never move away from. So I think Olave's solid. He's priced at 6,200. I mean, that's still well below where his season-long XFP per game is, really. Like, he's at 17.2. That would rank 6th best among slate-eligible wide receivers. Prices. But I feel like we make the same argument for Chris Olave kind of every week. This is probably not like the best week for it, just from a game environment perspective. But yeah, I like him a decent bit. Having a little bit of Shuck Olave is something I want to do this week. Juwan Johnson, I'm a little less bullish on, and the main reason for that is his route participation came way down last week, and it seems like it's because there is just an order from Saints ownership, from whoever's making the decisions there in New Orleans, that Taysom Hill has to be on the field for a certain number of plays, and if that means that he's running routes out of the slot instead of Juwan Johnson for like X, then that's what it has to mean. And unfortunately, I do kind of think this sticks around, just because it, like, the change was predicted literally just by Kellen Moore the week before, saying we're going to get Taysom more snaps. The more snaps came at the expense of Juwan Johnson. Like, I kind of think it continues. So he's just way less attractive to me than maybe he would be in a regular week, where I would think he was going to run all the routes.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Scott, I'm curious what you think of Devin Neal. He is a top 8 projected running back value for us. It's just tough when Tyler Shuck, Taysom Hill are stealing almost all the inside the 10 stuff, although, Neal, of course, did score a touchdown on, I believe, an inside the 5 carry last week.
Yeah, he's a player you and I went back and forth on. You did see, in a loss a couple of weeks ago, he had 7 targets, and then in last week's victory, 19 carries, 84 yards from scrimmage and a score. But no, I think you nailed it. I just don't think there's really a ton of upside here. Not going to make my pool. I was going to ask you about Bryce Young, though, who I feel like this is a real stat. I feel like he's been in the winning Millie lineup more than any other quarterback over the last calendar year. Like, he's had 4, slate breaking games and then just sucks every other week. That was your stat. Like, you've pivoted to Cam Ward, who I don't think has done anything, but that was your boy once upon a time. 4 games with 26 or more DraftKings fantasy points in the last calendar year for Bryce Young.
Yeah, I don't think I'm getting to any Bryce Young this week. I mean, he projects okay. He's our QB 13 by value. It's just it's not an ideal game environment. I think there are better values. Honestly, I'd rather play Tyler Shuck, save 200, go that direction. I don't think really I'm going to play any. Just to be clear, I do really appreciate Scott for saying Cam Ward is my boy. Every week Cam Ward is 1% owned. I play 2%, and those lineups are just terrible. Let's see what else here. I really don't think I have much else. Carolina side, if you are playing Bryce Young, Ted McMillan is the obvious stacking partner there. I'm probably not going to get to much Ted in this game, though. Projects as sort of a mediocre value. 6, 7, 8% ownership feels fine. Ryan, anything else on this one before we talk Rams Lions?
Yeah, I don't think so. Let's get to the game of the slate.
All right, yeah, this is one of the best game environments we've seen all year. 54.5 total for the Detroit Lions at the Los Angeles Rams. Lions are 6-point underdogs. Khalif Raymond questionable for Detroit. Devontae Adams also questionable for the Rams. Sean McVay said Adams is expected to play. Scott, let's start with the Lions side. I mean, Jared Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams, all shaping up as fantastic plays. How are you sort of viewing all those guys this week?
Yeah, and it's really weird that you're not seeing a ton of ownership on Jared Goff this week. Negative game script, which is 6-point underdogs, which is really unusual for them, and you have this insane 55-point over under, like you said, and things are a bit more condensed now due to injuries. I had a hard time picking between Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams. Maybe Ryan Heath can shed some clarity on that. You could argue the matchup is, equally favorable in different ways. I do worry about the Amon-Ra injury, but, it didn't seem to slow him down in his last game. And then Jahmyr Gibbs just, I feel like I kind of called it a couple of weeks ago in the Everything Report. Before it started happening, now it's just totally happening. Just these massive mega spike weeks. It looks like he's going to be that guy to close out the season as like the player you had to have in order to win a championship, like he was last year, really benefiting from Dan Campbell, usage and volume upticks all around. Ryan, what do you think on St. Brown versus JMO here? I will say if you play on both sites to make it easy, JMO's the better value for sure on FanDuel. So maybe you go heavier there and then heavier on Amon-Ra and DraftKings.
Yeah, so you can definitely argue this matchup either way. I lean towards St. Brown in a vacuum. The Rams a top 5 mark in receiving yards per game within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. St. Brown is averaging the 7th most targets per game in that area of the field of any player in the NFL with 5.8. So that's like the bigger thing that sticks out to me. You could argue the Rams also have been more vulnerable on the perimeter. That would help Jameson Williams. Certainly when it comes to like actually building a lineup, I think it's a little easier to fit JMO just because there are other like better expensive wide receiver plays. Like you can get Chase or Puka. If you're playing St. Brown, you're probably not getting to either of those other two. So that's like a consideration to have. But yeah, I think in a vacuum, if I'm stacking the Lions, if I'm committing to that stack, I'm going to go with St. Brown first. But yeah, I mean, both very good plays. Other thing I kind of want to call out on that note is just Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's one of the best plays on the slate. And for a similar reason to what I just said with St. Brown, where the Rams funnel everything underneath. Since Dan Campbell started calling plays, Gibbs is actually seeing 6.8 targets per game within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, like even more than St. Brown. Like the volume could just be incredible for him. We've seen him completely nuke in 3 out of his last 5 games. So yeah, there's just so many ways you can go here. I wish I could offer better guidance, but yeah, Jameson Williams is like my third favorite play of the 3. Shocker, I'm the Jameson Williams hater once again, but that's where I land ultimately.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, this is a game where you're going to want as much exposure as possible. Scott, on the other side of this game, we have Matthew Stafford, who is projecting for a bit more ownership than Goff, but not really significantly so. Only projects as an above average value because he is priced up all the way at $7K. And then, of course, we have Colby Parkinson, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, who are earning pretty much all the targets in this offense. And, all of these guys project pretty well. How are you sort of sorting these Rams pass catchers when you look at that team?
Yeah, I'm actually not that into Devontae Adams. And I know he hasn't hit a 100-yard bonus all year. He's really just, scoring touchdowns at an insane rate. But I do worry about this hamstring where he only practiced one day this week. It was only in a limited capacity. He is an older player. And so it's a mixture of like hamstrings are the injuries that scare me more than anything when I see a player on the injury report with one. And then at this age, it gets compounded. I think that benefits Puka Nacua, who, clearly, you know, one of the best plays or wide receivers in the game, second in fantasy points per game behind only JSN. It's a great on paper and schematic matchup for him. You have Kobe Parkinson, who, you know, especially if something's off with Devontae Adams, stands to benefit, easily leads all tight ends in red zone targets over the last 4 weeks. And given this implied point total, there's clearly tremendous touchdown upside. I might write up Blake Corum as a galaxy brain play. I think in this matchup, but this over under, you have to consider it at his price tag.
Yeah, curious what your thinking is on Corum. I was just about to ask you about this backfield.
Yeah, well, so the split has been a lot more in his favor lately. I think last week, and you know, maybe this was, you know, blowout script or whatever, but it was a 55-45 split by XFP. And Corum's just looked great over the last 2 games. He has over 200 yards from scrimmage, multiple touchdowns. So to me, this feels like we call it on Outside the Box, a Neil ass play, but I'm kind of into it. Just you're talking about a 55 over under. You could just onslaught stack this game, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's, you know, what breaks it this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with a total this high, tons of great plays. Pretty much the only guy that we haven't talked about yet, Colby Parkinson, since week 10 leads all tight ends in red zone targets, also ranks 8th in fantasy points per game. Price is just the tight end 20, massive implied team total here for the Rams, so that red zone volume. Certainly very valuable here. Ryan, I'm curious if you have anything to add on the Rams side before we get out of here. I mean, this is just a great game.
Yeah, Parkinson was the guy I wanted to shout out. I think he's maybe aside from like the Ravens guys, the best like cheap punt tight end on the slate. I'd way rather play him than like an AJ Barner. Parkinson has benefited from man coverage this year as well, a 30% boost to his targets per out run, which the Lions play at the highest rate in the league. So yeah, that would be my only addition. But yeah, this game's great.
Yeah, I'm with you. At least for tournaments, Barner projects a little bit better in our stuff on a point per dollar basis, but I think it's like raw upside. I like Colby Parkinson a bit more here. Yeah, fantastic game. Really fun way to cap off the slate on a 5-game 4 p.m.er. And that'll do it for the Week 15 edition of Cashing Points. Really appreciate everybody for tuning in, and we will see you all at the top of the leaderboards.
What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.